On a moonlit night in the summer of 1941, Dusko Popov sat in his luxurious cabin aboard the ship Excalibur, sailing from Lisbon to New York. Between his slender fingers, he turned a glass of French champagne, while his eyes, those dark Serbian eyes that had captured the hearts of women across 3 continents, gazed out at the vast Atlantic Ocean stretching into the darkness. He was no ordinary man. Years before, in the city of Dubrovnik, Croatia, overlooking the Adriatic, Dusko grew up in a wealthy Serbian family. His father was a successful businessman, and Dusko, the son born in 1912, carried in his blood an explosive mix of intelligence, audacity, and irresistible charm. He studied law at the University of Freiburg in Germany, where he met his friend Johann Jebsen, the young German who, unbeknownst to Dusko, fate would turn into a bridge to the world of espionage. Johann was warm and cultured, but he also harbored a growing enthusiasm for the Nazi Party. "You're clever, Dusko," Johann told him one evening as they strolled along the banks of the Drizem River. "But you waste your intelligence on women and parties." Dusko laughed with that deep laugh that awakened the curiosity of anyone who heard it. "And women and parties, my friend, are where the real decisions of this world are made." He didn't know then how prophetic those words would prove to be. In 1940, with war having swallowed all of Europe, Johann Jebsen, now an officer in the Abwehr, German military intelligence, under Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, came to his old friend with an offer. They sat in an elegant café in Belgrade. Before them were 2 cups of Turkish coffee, and around them hung the atmosphere of a city dreading the future. "Germany needs men like you, Dusko," Johann said in a low voice. "Men who move easily, speak many languages, who know how to open locked doors. You want me to spy? I want you to serve the side that will win." Dusko was silent for a moment. He looked at the coffee in his cup as if reading the future in it. Then he raised his eyes and said, "I'll do it." But what he didn't tell his friend was that before he even walked out of that café, he had made another decision deep within himself. Dusko Popov hated Nazism with every cell in his body. He had seen what it had done to his friends, his neighbors, to the soul of the Europe he loved. And he knew the only way to fight it was from the inside. The next day, he knocked on the door of the British embassy. Before the British intelligence officer of MI6, Dusko sat with the calm of a man who knew the value of what he possessed. "The Germans have recruited me," he said simply. "And I'm offering you my services." The British officer, a thin man with a fine mustache and eyes that trusted no one, studied him for a long time before asking, "Why?" "Because I believe Hitler is a monster. And because I prefer to live in a world where Britain wins over a world ruled by the Third Reich." "And the price?" Dusko smiled, "To stay alive. And perhaps, some extra expenses for appearances. Good spies need to live like the wealthy." Thus was born the double agent, Tricycle, a nickname said to have come from his fondness for 3-way relationships with women, though Popov himself preferred a less scandalous explanation. The capital of neutral Portugal, was the stage for the Great Deception. A city suspended between the 2 warring worlds, teeming with spies, diplomats, smugglers, arms dealers, and beautiful women whose true loyalties you could never be certain of. At the Casino Estoril, the most glamorous casino in Europe, Dusko Popov played his multiple roles with the skill of a professional actor. On one famous night, he entered the casino wearing a meticulously tailored black suit, his dark hair slicked back, and on his arm a French woman of breathtaking beauty. He headed straight for the baccarat table, his favorite game. He knew that at the table across from him sat an Abwehr officer watching him. In the corner, a British agent watched everyone. And the waiter pouring his whiskey worked for Portuguese intelligence. Everyone watching everyone, and everyone smiling. Dusko placed $50,000, an astronomical sum in those days, on the table in one go. The message was clear: I am a man who knows no fear. I am a man worthy of trust. I am a man who lives on the edge and enjoys every moment of it. It is said that a young British writer was present that night. His name was Ian Fleming, the officer in British naval intelligence who would later create the character of James Bond. And it is said that Popov was the true inspiration for Agent 007, the elegant man, the gambler, the lover of women, who lived a double life in a world of secrets and danger. In the summer of 1941, his Abwehr handler in Lisbon summoned him to a secret meeting. "We have a special mission for you, Ivan," the German said, sliding a small envelope toward him. "You will go to America. You will gather information about their military fortifications. And these," he pointed to tiny dots barely visible to the naked eye, "are your instructions." The microdot technology, one of the greatest achievements of German espionage, consisted of photographs reduced to the size of a typographical period, containing entire pages of information. When the British decoded those dots, they found something that struck them with astonishment: a detailed questionnaire about the American naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Questions about the number of ships, docking positions, patrol schedules, weaknesses in the defenses. The implication was as clear as daylight: Japan, Germany's ally, was planning an attack on Pearl Harbor. When Dusko arrived in New York in August 1941, he carried this warning directly to the FBI, where he requested a meeting with its legendary director, J. Edgar Hoover. Hoover's office on the 5th floor of the Department of Justice building in Washington was a place that reeked of intimidation. Behind an enormous mahogany desk sat the most powerful man in America, a short man, square-faced, with small, sharp eyes like those of a bulldog. Dusko entered with his customary elegance and unshakable confidence. "Mr. Hoover, I have information indicating that the Japanese are planning an attack on Pearl Harbor. Possibly within the coming months." Hoover looked at him with cold contempt. He didn't like this overdressed foreigner. He didn't like his European accent, his expensive suit, or his excessive confidence. Above all, Hoover, the man who had built his empire on absolute control, could not tolerate someone from outside his system telling him what to do. "Listen, Mr. Popov," Hoover said in an icy voice. "I know your type. You're not a spy. You're a playboy. You live off other people's money. Sleep with their women, and think that makes you important. Mr. Hoover, the information that we're done here." Dusko walked out of that office with a lump in his chest he had never felt before. For the first time in his life, he experienced true helplessness. He held in his hand a key that could save thousands of lives, but the man who held the lock refused even to look at it. On December 7, 1941, when Japanese bombs rained down on Pearl Harbor, killing more than 2,400 Americans and sinking an entire fleet, Dusko Popov sat in his New York apartment listening to the radio, tears burning his eyes. "I knew," he whispered to himself. "I told them." Despite the bitter failure with Hoover, Dusko did not give up. He returned to Europe, to Lisbon, to London, to his role as a double agent at the heart of the most dangerous war humanity had ever known. The greatest challenge was staying alive. In the game of double espionage, you always walk a tightrope over an abyss. One mistake, a word out of place, a nervous glance, a report that doesn't add up, and everything ends with a bullet in a cellar or a rope around the neck. He had to convince the Germans that he was their loyal agent Ivan, gathering real secrets from the heart of the British camp. And at the same time, he had to feed them information that was true enough to be believable, and false enough to be devastating. This art, the art of disinformation, required a mind that operated on multiple levels simultaneously. Dusko would sit with an Abwehr officer at a lavish dinner, laugh at his jokes, drink his toasts, and dictate to him a precise report on British military movements, a report written by MI5 officers themselves, carefully crafted to deceive the Germans. A good lie, Dusko used to say, must be surrounded by 90% truth. The year 1944 arrived, and the Allies began preparing for the greatest military operation in history, the Normandy landings, D-Day. The crucial question was, how do we convince Hitler that the landing will be somewhere else? Here, Dusko Popov's role reached its zenith. He was part of Operation Fortitude, the grand deception plan aimed at convincing the Germans that the main invasion would come at Calais, not Normandy. Dusko, the trusted agent Ivan of the Abwehr, sent carefully fabricated reports about phantom army movements, fake ship concentrations, and plans that existed only in the imagination of British deception masterminds. On the night of June 5, 1944, as thousands of ships cut through the English Channel in darkness heading for the beaches of Normandy, Hitler remained convinced that the real attack would come at Calais. He kept his reserve armored divisions there, far from the real battle, waiting for an invasion that would never come. It was one of the greatest deceptions in military history. And Dusko Popov, the man Hoover had dismissed as a playboy, was one of its unsung heroes. But even spies fall in love. Her name was Simone Simon, a French actress of enchanting beauty with wide eyes and a laugh like music. Dusko met her in Hollywood during his time in America, and he fell for her with the speed of a bullet. But love in the life of a double agent was a dangerous luxury. Every woman he drew close to became a potential target. Every kiss could be a trap. Every word whispered in the darkness could find its way to an enemy's ear. "Will you ever tell me who you really are?" Simone asked him one night as they walked along Santa Monica Beach. He looked at the Pacific Ocean, which was never truly Pacific, and said, "I am a man who loves you. That's all I can be right now." The story didn't last long. War shows no mercy to lovers, and secrets devour hearts from within. There was also the actress Audrey Hepburn, in her early days, and many other women whose names orbited around this man who attracted them like a magnet. But behind every charming smile, there was a lonely man carrying secrets heavier than any love. Dusko's life was not all parties and casinos. There were moments when he stood on the literal edge of the abyss. On one occasion, his Abwehr handler Ludovico von Karsthoff summoned him to an urgent meeting in Lisbon. The atmosphere was tense. Von Karsthoff sat behind his desk, and before him lay a thick file. "Ivan," he said in a quiet, menacing voice, "we've received troubling reports." Dusko's heart stopped for a second, just 1 second, then resumed beating at a calm, controlled rhythm. This is what separates a great spy from an amateur, the ability to control your body when everything inside you screams danger. "Reports about what?" he asked in a tone of innocent curiosity. "Reports suggesting that some of your information is inaccurate." "Inaccurate or outdated?" Dusko replied with calculated confidence. "My dear von Karsthoff, the British change their plans every week. What I transmit to you is accurate the moment I obtain it. What happens after that is not my fault." The German was silent. He looked at the file. Then he looked at Dusko. Then he closed the file. "Have some coffee, Ivan. And let's discuss your next mission." Dusko walked out of that meeting with his knees trembling, but he showed it only when he closed the door of his hotel room and stood before the mirror, staring at his pale face. The hardest part of Dusko's life was not the fear of death, but the betrayal of his friend Johan Jebsen, the man who had opened the door to the world of espionage for him. Every time he sent a fabricated report through the Abwehr, he knew he was betraying Johan's trust. The man who had sat beside him on university benches, who had shared laughter and dreams with him, who had believed in him and vouched for him before his superiors. Can you betray a friend to save the world? He asked himself countless times. The answer was always, yes. But the price was steep. It ate away at his soul, piece by piece. After the war, when Germany collapsed and the truth was revealed, Johan discovered the reality. What he said or felt was never recorded. But Dusko later wrote, the war ended. The Third Reich fell. Victory flags were raised in London, Washington, and Moscow. But the spies, those who had worked in the shadows, received no parades, no medals, no victory speeches. Dusko Popov returned to civilian life. He settled on the French Riviera, where the warm climate suited him, along with beautiful women and a quiet life. He worked in business, invested his money wisely, and lived the life of a wealthy man, enjoying his later years under the Mediterranean sun. But the past would not leave him. At night, the nightmares came. He saw the faces of the dead of Pearl Harbor who might have been saved if Hoover had listened to him. He saw Johan's face, eyes filled with betrayal. He saw himself sitting at the baccarat table in Casino Estoril, wearing a fake smile while his heart was tearing apart. In 1974, he finally decided to tell his story. He published his memoirs under the title, Spy/Counterspy. The book was a revelation. For the first time, the world learned about the man who had warned of Pearl Harbor months in advance, and the man who had helped deceive Hitler on D-Day. On August 10, 1981, Dusko Popov passed away in his apartment in the French town of Opio, at the age of 69. There was no grand official funeral. No head of state delivered a eulogy. No flags were lowered. For spies, even after death, remain in the shadows. But his legacy endured. It lived on in the pages of history that tell how one man, armed with his intelligence, his courage, and his charm, managed to deceive the most formidable intelligence apparatus in the world. It lived on in every James Bond film, that fictional spy born from the womb of Dusko's real life. It lived on in the eternal lesson he taught the world, that the most powerful weapon in war is not the tank or the bomb, but information. On a cold winter evening in 2024, a young man stands in the Imperial War Museum in London before a small panel telling the story of the double-cross system. He reads the name Dusko Popov and pauses. Who was this man, he asks himself. If Dusko were alive, he would have answered with his charming smile, me. I'm just a man who loved life more than he should have, hated tyranny more than he should have, and played the most dangerous game in history, and won. Then he would have raised his glass and said, and now, if you'll excuse me, I have a baccarat table waiting for me.